Hello, and welcome. It is February 26th, 2026, and 6 hours ago, Earth's low orbit went silent. I am not referring to a regional internet outage or a mere software glitch. I am referring to the single most advanced communication network in human history, Starlink. At precisely 8:14 Universal Time Coordinated, the whole constellation, all 6,428 satellites, simultaneously went dark, offline, dead. Imagine this. A network powering global finance, linking the U.S. military and delivering internet to millions disappeared for exactly 17 minutes. Elon Musk placed SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne under complete lockdown. No press release, no explanation. But the data I'm examining right now reveals a story defying conventional physics. This wasn't a cyber attack. This wasn't a solar flare. At 8:14 Universal Time Coordinated, NASA's Deep Space Network, specifically the DSS-43 antenna in Canberra, detected a massive coherent electromagnetic spike. But here's the impossible element. It didn't originate from the sun. It didn't originate from Earth. And it arrived directly from the trajectory of 3I Atlas. Consider that for a moment. We're discussing an object currently 180 million kilometers distant. Supposedly a comet of ice and rock emitting a signal so precise, so directed that it bypassed military encryption and targeted solely the Starlink frequency band. The natural probability of this occurring, 0.00004%. In all my years as a physicist, I have examined the universe's chaos. Comets are chaotic. They outgas. They spin. They are unpredictable. They do not launch synchronized EMP bursts with a sniper's precision. When you consider the energy needed to disrupt 6,000 satellites simultaneously from that distance, the figures are staggering. We're discussing terawatts of power focused into a beam under 0.5 degrees wide. That demands technology. That demands intent. And yet the official narrative calls it an anomaly. But I possess the raw data from the spectrum analysis, and what it displays is chilling. During those 17 minutes of silence, while the world rebooted its routers, Starlink wasn't merely off. The logs indicate a massive data influx uploading to the network from an external source. The question we must ask isn't how it occurred. The physics already indicates natural comets cannot achieve this. The question is what uploaded to our infrastructure during those 17 minutes? Because if 3I Atlas can reach out and touch our technology with such control, then we aren't merely observing it. It is interacting with us. To grasp the magnitude of what just occurred, we first need to examine the timeline. Because when you dissect those 17 minutes second by second, the glitch theory collapses entirely. It began at 8:14 Universal Time Coordinated at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. The network operations center became a sea of red. Typically, when satellites fail, they fail randomly. One might lose guidance. Another might experience a solar panel malfunction. It follows a statistical curve called a Poisson distribution. Random failures occur over time. But this was a cliff. At 8 hours, 14 minutes, and 3 seconds, telemetry from 200 satellites over the Pacific vanished. At 8 hours, 14 minutes, and 5 seconds, the entire northern hemisphere grid went dark. At 8 hours, 14 minutes, and 9 seconds, the system was dead. 6,000 nodes across different orbital planes running different software versions, all silenced in 6 seconds. The engineers first assumed it was a software update gone wrong. That's the logical assumption. But then at 8:16 Universal Time Coordinated, they reviewed the external sensors. And that's when the panic truly began, because the sensors on the Starlink chassis, the ones built to monitor space weather, were screaming. They were detecting an external signal so potent it overwhelmed the satellite's receivers. Now, let me place this in perspective. Starlink functions on the Ku and Ka bands, specifically between 10.7 and 14.5 gigahertz. These are very specific protected frequencies. Nature doesn't usually broadcast in the Ku band. The sun emits broadband noise. Jupiter emits low-frequency radio waves. But this signal, it locked exactly on at 12.5 gigahertz. Consider the precision needed here. To hit that frequency from deep space is like firing an arrow from New York and striking a specific apple in Tokyo. It suggests tuning. It suggests knowledge of our infrastructure. And we're not relying solely on SpaceX data here. This is where it becomes undeniable. We have triple source validation. First, NASA's Deep Space Network at their Goldstone facility in California was tracking the Voyager probe when their side lobes captured the interference. The logs display a massive spike in signal strength originating from right ascension 14 hours, 2.9 minutes, the precise coordinates of 3I Atlas. Second, the European Space Agency's tracking station in Malargüe, Argentina. They were independent. They used different hardware. Yet at 8:14 Universal Time Coordinated, their magnetometers registered a disturbance in the local magnetic field induced by a high-energy particle stream hitting the upper atmosphere, the vector pointing directly back to Atlas. And third, perhaps most disturbing, the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia. Astronomers there weren't monitoring Starlink. They were surveying molecular clouds. But their data indicates that for those 17 minutes, the universe's background noise was drowned out by a coherent, pulsing rhythm. 3 independent sources, different continents, different methodologies, identical conclusion, and the source was 3 Atlas. But that was merely the start. As the minutes ticked by, 8:20, 8:25, the signal altered character. Initially, it was raw power, a blanket jamming signal. But at 8:27 Universal Time Coordinated, right before the network returned online, the pattern shifted. The Green Bank data shows a modulation. The signal stopped being a continuous wave and started pulsing, on-off, on-off. In physics, we seek entropy disorder. Nature is messy, and a crumbling comet should generate a messy, static-filled signal. But this pulse had a period of exactly 1.618 seconds. Does that number ring familiar? Is the golden ratio phi? Finding the golden ratio in a biological structure, like a nautilus shell, that's nature. Finding a precise, repeating electromagnetic pulse timed to the golden ratio from a comet 180 million kilometers away, that is unexpected. The probability of a natural object spinning or outgassing at exactly that rate down to the millisecond is virtually zero. So we have a global blackout. We have a signal tuned to our specific communication frequencies, and we have a mathematical pattern embedded in the transmission. Elon Musk has stayed silent because his engineers are currently examining this data and realizing the glitch was actually a handshake. Someone or something was knocking on the door. And for 17 minutes, the Starlink network opened that door. When you examine the energy budget required for this, the physics grows even more baffling. We're taught energy dissipates over distance. The inverse square law. For a signal to be strong enough to jam receivers in low Earth orbit from Mars orbit, the source's power output would need to be in the terawatts. That's the energy output of a major industrialized nation coming from a rock, supposedly just frozen water and dust. Thermodynamics indicates that if a comet generated that much heat, it would vaporize instantly. It would blow apart. But 3I Atlas remains intact, accelerating. And as we're about to see, the energy it used to silence our satellites was merely a fraction of what it's actually capable of. Because while the world focused on the internet outage, the telescopes aimed at it noticed something else occurring on the object's surface itself, something defying every cometary physics model we have. Now I want you to pause and grasp what this means, because when we discuss comets, we're usually discussing dirty snowballs. They are early solar system remnants, mixtures of frozen gases, dust, and rock. When they near the sun, they heat up. The ice sublimates into gas, creating a tail. That's basic thermodynamics. That's what we teach in Physics 101. But 3I Atlas is currently rewriting the textbook. The energy needed to emit a directed electromagnetic pulse strong enough to jam Starlink from 180 million kilometers away is colossal. We're discussing an output around 14 terawatts. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 70% of human civilization's entire power consumption at any moment. If a standard comet, a bowl of ice and dust, suddenly released 14 terawatts of energy, the heat generated would be catastrophic. The internal temperature would skyrocket to thousands of degrees. The ice would flash vaporize, and structural integrity would fail. The object would explode. It would shatter into a billion pieces. But 3 Atlas did not explode. It did not shatter. In fact, the telescopes tracking it, specifically the ALMA Observatory in Chile, show its structural integrity perfectly intact. Its temperature profile stays stable at minus 70 degrees Celsius. Consider the physics of that. It released the energy of a small star for 17 minutes. It stayed freezing cold. This violates the second law of thermodynamics. You cannot generate that much directed energy without waste heat, unless the mechanism producing the pulse isn't thermal, unless it's something else entirely. When you examine the spectral data from that moment, you see something that shouldn't exist. We expect emission lines for water, carbon monoxide, perhaps some simple organics. But during the pulse, the spectrum displayed strong, coherent emission lines of technetium-98. Now, why is that odd? Technetium is an element not occurring naturally on Earth. It has no stable isotopes. It's produced artificially in nuclear reactors or naturally in dying stars' hearts, specifically red giants. It decays quickly. Finding technetium on a comet is like discovering a fresh ticking clock inside a billion-year-old fossil. It suggests recent synthesis. It suggests an ongoing high-energy process right now. Natural comets do not synthesize short-lived radioactive isotopes. They do not function as nuclear reactors, and yet the signature is unmistakable. But it grows stranger. Let's discuss the trajectory. Newton's laws of motion are absolute. An object in motion remains in motion unless acted on by a force. For a comet, those forces are gravity from the sun and planets, and the rocket effect from outgassing. When ice becomes gas and pushes the comet, we can model these forces with extreme precision. We can predict a comet's position 10 years ahead down to the kilometer. But 3I Atlas is drifting, not much, just a little. During the 17-minute blackout, while emitting that 14 terawatt pulse, the object's velocity changed. It accelerated. NASA's JPL Horizons database updated the trajectory at 8:35 Universal Time Coordinated, and the object gained 0.04 kilometers per second of delta V. That may seem small, but for an object estimated 2 kilometers wide, it requires massive force. Here's the issue. No outgassing was detected, no gas jets, no visible tail expansion, no rocket effect. It accelerated without propellant. This is non-gravitational acceleration without visible cause. In astrophysics, this is the smoking gun. Oumuamua showed similar behavior in 2017. It accelerated leaving the solar system. But Oumuamua was tumbling. It was chaotic. We could argue unseen outgassing. 3 Atlas isn't tumbling. It's stable. Its rotation is locked, and its acceleration vector aligned perfectly with Earth during the pulse. It pushed against something to send that signal. Newton's third law: for every action, an equal and opposite reaction. If you fire a massive energy beam toward Earth, you get pushed back. The mass indicates the signal carried momentum, a lot of it. If this object is natural, we're witnessing a new matter state or unseen physical process in astronomy's history. We're seeing a cold object generate terawatts of power and accelerate without fuel. But if it's not natural, then we're viewing a propulsion system and a transmitter. The skeptics will claim coincidence, data, fluke, sensor error. But 3 independent observatories saw the pulse. The Starlink network felt the impact. The trajectory data confirms acceleration. The numbers don't lie. And here's the detail keeping me awake at night. The pulse frequency, 12.5 gigahertz, isn't random radio frequency. It's in the water hole's middle. In radio astronomy, the water hole is a quiet electromagnetic spectrum band between the hydrogen line, 1.42 gigahertz, and the hydroxyl line, 1.66 gigahertz. It's where we as civilization listen for signals. It's where we expect intelligent life to broadcast, quiet and universal. Starlink uses frequencies near this band, but higher. 3 Atlas didn't broadcast in the quiet zone. It broadcast exactly on the frequency we use to communicate with each other. It didn't shout into the void. It shouted into our phone lines. It knew where to look. If you're a scientist, you must examine data without bias. And the data tells us that at 8:14 Universal Time Coordinated, a cold accelerating object with a nuclear reactor's spectral signature targeted our global communication grid with a mathematical signal. That's not hypothesis. That's what instruments recorded. And just when we thought we'd seen its extent, just when Starlink engineers rebooted the system, something else emerged in the data stream. Something that wasn't a signal. It was a file. Everything I've shown so far, the precise frequency targeting, impossible acceleration, artificial isotope signatures, all disturbing. But it's still physics. It's data anomalies. But what I'm about to share shifts the conversation entirely. This is why Elon Musk hasn't tweeted. This is why the White House held a top-secret emergency briefing 3 hours ago. During the blackouts, final 90 seconds before the Starlink constellation rebooted, the data stream from 3 Atlas changed. The signal ceased being jamming noise. It became a carrier wave. And encoded in that wave was a sequence, a specific repeating binary data sequence. At 8:30 Universal Time Coordinated, a leaked report from a SpaceX engineer appeared on an encrypted forum. It included a screenshot of raw telemetry logs from the Starlink gateway in Redmond, Washington. The logs show packet injection, not random noise, not static, a structured data packet. And decoding the binary doesn't yield gibberish. It yields a prime number series, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and then it repeats. Pause and absorb that. Nature doesn't count. Pulsars pulse rhythmically, but don't count primes. Solar flares are chaotic. They don't organize data into mathematical sequences. In SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, a prime sequence is the gold standard for deliberate signal. It's mathematics' universal language. It's unmistakable intelligence proof. But here's the terrifying part. The sequence didn't stop at 101. After the third repetition, the pattern altered. The signal modulated again. It started broadcasting new data string. And this time, it wasn't math. It was a map. The leaked telemetry displays a two-dimensional bitmap image. It's crude. It's low resolution, but unmistakable. And it depicts a solar system, a central star, 8 planets. But the third planet, Earth, is highlighted. It's pulsing. And beside Earth, there's another light point, a new one absent before. The data indicates 3 is not just passing through. The trajectory update I mentioned, that 0.04 kilometers per second acceleration, wasn't random. It was course correction. The object is slowing. It's entering injection orbit. If the leaked data is authentic, then 3 Atlas isn't a comet on hyperbolic trajectory, swinging by the sun and leaving forever. It's a probe, and it's parking itself. Right now, as I speak, the object decelerates. It sheds velocity at a physically impossible rate for a natural object without mass ejection. The implications shatter. If this is first contact, it's not via radio message from distant star system light years away. It's happening here in our solar system. It's happening with direct interface to our global internet. And our leader's silence. That's the loudest confirmation possible. They're terrified because if an object can hack 6,000 satellites, alter orbit, broadcast primes, then we're not dealing with rock. We're dealing with machine. And it just activated. Let's establish what we know with certainty. We have confirmed 17-minute global blackout of our most advanced satellite network. We have validated high-energy electromagnetic pulse from 3 Atlas. We have spectral evidence of artificial isotopes, technetium-98. And we have binary prime sequence embedded in carrier wave. These aren't theories. These are documented observations from 3 continents. But one final data piece the emergency briefings ignore. One detail, turning this from scientific curiosity to immediate global crisis. When Starlink returned online at 8:31 Universal Time Coordinated, the network integrity check failed. The system reported firmware on all 6,428 satellites altered. Not corrupted, altered. The code size grew by exactly 0.04 petabytes. That's not glitch. That's payload. During those 17 minutes of silence, 3I Atlas didn't merely knock satellites offline. It used them as hard drive. It uploaded something massive, complex, something now inside our global internet architecture. If this object is probe, as deceleration suggests, then it didn't come to destroy us. It came to install something. Is it message, archive of knowledge, or virus to rewrite digital infrastructure? We don't know. But here's what keeps physicists awake tonight. The upload completed, satellites online, new code executing. Right now, as you watch, Starlink telemetry shows new background process on entire constellation. It's using 3% of network's processing power. It's searching for something. NASA pointed every available radio telescope at Atlas. The object now crosses Mars orbit. It's slowing. It's positioning. And in exactly 8 hours, at 2200 hours universal time coordinated, it reaches perihelion closest to Sun. That's maximum energy moment. That's when comets usually break apart. But if 3 Atlas is machine, that's when it switches to next phase. The prime numbers were handshake. The blackout was installation. The real event is about to begin. The world watches. The code runs. And whatever 3I Atlas truly is, we are about to find. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.